All right, joining me now on the program here is a member of actually he's former chairman of the Monroe County Republican Party, Jeff Andring. Andring, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. He is not happy with the Senate Majority Leader of the Michigan Senate, Randy Richardville, who is a Republican, and Mr. Andring is a Republican, but he thinks that Randy Richardville is not conservative enough. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Charlie, to you and your audience.
How's your voice? I understand you've got a little bit of a cold, right?
Yes, I do. I'm a little under the weather this morning.
Well, it's going to be a great weekend, so we'll I was intrigued by your action. I tell you, we'll make it as easy as possible. My voice is a little scratchy as well, so we're all in the same boat there.
Yes, sir.
Listen, real quickly though, I'm concerned, or not concerned, but I'm trying to find out exactly why it is that you, a Republican, would want to recall another fellow Republican who has a very prominent role. He is the leader of the Michigan Senate. Why don't you give us a thumbnail about just the procedure? Why would you want to do that?
Well, Senator Richardville's from my home district here, and this state is in serious financial trouble, and we need a leader that can plot the course towards the recovery. I know Senator Richardville, and I don't believe that he's the person for the job.
But I'm sorry, but isn't the proper way to vote him out of office, or why don't you run? Have you ever run against him?
I have not run against him, no. I had planned on it at one time, but my personal life forbids it this time and back then. But
wouldn't the proper way? I mean, I'm just the recalls. I mean, here's you've got a guy, and by the way, if he's recalled, let's assume you go through the language of your petition, you get the 22,000 plus signatures that you're going to need, you get it all. I mean, someone else is going to be elected, or someone else is going to be appointed in there, so it's kind of a little bit vindictiveness, isn't it, Jeff Andrew?
Oh, I don't think it's vindictiveness. I think it's sending our politicians a message that they have to represent us and not represent the special interest. If you read the petition, basically it goes through and states, some of the actions that Senator Richardville has sponsored or co-sponsored that I disagree with in one way or another.
Well, let's take a look at some of those. There's actually three of them. And one of them is kind of an interesting one with regard to the Republican Party chairman, Bobby Shostak. And apparently there was a bill that was kind of hustled through the legislature. I'll give you that a little bit. Anyway, it's a technical bill that Bobby Shostak's brother had a $2.4 million judgment against him on some business issues, and it had to do with the defaulting on a loan and whether or not banks would be able to recover certain pledged collateral. I don't want to get too technical about it, but it is a rather technical bill. Bottom line here is that the legislature quickly passed this bill, signed by the governor, and essentially what this bill would do, it would eliminate the $2.4 million judgment against the party chairman's brother. That's what happened. But Randy Richardville was a part of it, wasn't he? In fact, there was bipartisan support for this bill.
Right. And the problem I have with this is, again, you put your principles before your party, not your party before your principles. This legislation does not afford the average citizens out there that are facing foreclosure the same guarantees and protections that it's designed to with these business people that are in serious debt. That's my issue with the bill. It's picking winners and losers, which the government shouldn't be in that business.
Well, but again, though, isn't this the type of thing that you'd want to speak at the hearing or lobby through the legislative, but to basically to oust somebody for voting on a bill which had, again, it had bipartisan support. It was supported by the governor, or at least signed by the governor. So why is it Randy Richardville? Was this his bill? Was this the one? He was the main sponsor of this bill?
He's the leader, and he's the person that's in my district.
Let's go on to by the way, that bill is being challenged. I believe that bill will be challenged in the courts as well, saying it violates the Constitution. The banks don't like it because they thought they had a pledge of security, but now this bill limits what kind of security can be used to back a commercial loan. So it doesn't apply to everybody, only if you're in the commercial loaning business. So technical piece of legislation. The other thing you don't like is Randy Richardville supported right-to-work law, but that right-to-work would only affect public school teachers. You thought, Jeff Andrew, that bill should apply to all state workers, right?
Well, yes. Let me qualify. I'm not a big fan of public employee unions at all, and the reason is because they can bargain on both sides of the table through the election process. And with that being said, this only applies to the Michigan Education Association and not the American Federation of Teachers. So then again, the MEA was in the process of recalling it was a state representative, and he was ousted from office. And I believe before this all took place, in the very beginning, Richardville had sponsored this bill, the right to teach. And if you're going to do it, you don't single people out. It appears to me he was using this position as a bully pulpit. What you want to do is say, okay, we're going to do this across the board for all public employee unions, not just single out the teachers union.
The teachers would like that, I guess. I mean, that's a good argument. Interesting. 248-356-1270. That's still a very, very conservative point of view, though, even if you section out the public school teachers. I mean, I don't know if there's enough support in the legislature to do all employees, but nevertheless, let me take a call here. 248-356-1270. Doug from Delta County, listening online. I appreciate that. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, fellas. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that Shostak bill. I agree there was bipartisan support, but I don't believe a lot of people in the legislature that voted for it, it was rammed through very quickly, understood it was being made retroactive to benefit one person, basically. There was some good reporting done in, I believe it was the Detroit Free Press on it, and it was basically a bill designed for one.
Yeah, Paul Egan wrote that story from the Free Press. He kind of broke that story. Paul Egan's a great writer, by the way, formerly with the News, now with the Free Press. He's a great writer. And, yeah, it is very technical. In fact, Tom McMillan from around here, Rochester Hills, who chairs the House Oversight Committee, he said it's one of the most disturbing bills that they've taken up in the entire session.
Well, interestingly enough, Tom McMillan is the seatmate of my freshman rep up here in the 108th, Ed McBroom. And I talked to Ed McBroom about this bill in particularly. And Ed said he was all ready to vote yes. He didn't realize, and he looked at Tom McMillan, who's his seatmate. Every freshman rep gets a veteran rep to mentor them, basically. And He said Tom was visibly upset. And he said, Tom, what's the matter? And Tom said, it's a bad bill. And then he said, well, what do you mean? He says, it's a cutout. And then Ed McBroom said, for who? And he said, Shostak. And he said, I immediately changed my vote from a yes to a no.
Wow.
But I don't believe a lot of other reps even knew, certainly Republican and Democrat, because when you look at the vote count, most of them went right along. But I believe Richardville and a select few knew exactly what they were doing.
Well, listen, here's the deal. I mean, and again, I'm just reading what this thing. I mean, this whole issue did go to the courts, at part of it anyway. It's a very technical piece of legislation that really only applies to a commercial lender like the banks and supporting some of Shostak's businesses, this project up in Traverse City. But nevertheless here, there will be a court challenge to this bill. But here's the issue, though, Doug, and here's what we're talking about, is that should a legislature be thrown out of office subject to a recall for passing what arguably is a very controversial piece of legislation? And I just want to know, is the recall process, is that what the recall process should be used for? That's really the subject here.
I think there are the recall process laws in Michigan, maybe they should be changed a little bit. I know they're not other states, it's a little more difficult, but under the current rules, you saw Paul Scott get recalled.
That's right.
And I believe he wouldn't have been recalled if he wouldn't have had some personal issues that don't really fly well with Republican voters. And it sounds from what the allegations are, Mr. Richardville has maybe worse personal issues that the voters in his home district may say, we've had enough of you, Mr. Richardville.
Yeah, maybe. Doug, hey, listen, I appreciate it. Continue listening online in Upper Michigan from Delta County. I appreciate it. Doug, have yourself a great weekend. Jeff, well, you heard it. I mean, those are some of the issues here. We're certainly going to be focusing on this. By the way, just for completeness sake, the other part that's in your petition is that regarding the Detroit Bridge. That's another problem that you don't like Randy Richardville's support of that of the government bridge, right?
Absolutely, and the reason being is we have a a private individual that's willing to build the bridge. And I don't have, I don't know Mr. Maroon. I've never spoken with him, so I have no basically dog in this race. But if I've got a private person ready to build a bridge or willing to build a bridge, why would I, as a taxpayer, take the risk for something that may fail?
Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. Again, we're getting into the bridge issue here, but the big one is Canada doesn't want it. Canada doesn't want Matty Maroon to build that bridge. People in Windsor, go over to Windsor. I mean, it's like Southwest Detroit with all those trucks going over what really is a residential area. The people in Windsor, and I've been over there, and they want that all the bridge traffic moved, way down river. Or upriver, I guess it is. Anyway, downriver, upriver, whatever. Just away from the city of Windsor. So anyway, the people in Canada don't want the bridge. But again, the point being here is this the way to, you don't like the topic, I get it, and there are pros and cons on the bridge. Again, do we use the recall process for this? Let me ask you this, Jeff Andring. What's your status? Did you get approval on the language?
No, we're going to that early next month.
All right, and then you've got to get 22,000 signatures. That's quite a bit to get. So interesting. We'll have to follow this closely.